And so, again, we called this series Jesus is Better. And as we've gone through the first 10 chapters of the book of Hebrews, what the author has done for us is to point us back to Jesus and show us that through his death and resurrection, Jesus has come. Jesus is better than angels. Jesus is better than Moses. He's a better high priest who establishes a better covenant relationship between us and people and God. Jesus is better. And I love that. So Jesus is so clearly the focus of this book. And as we switch into the last few chapters, 11 through to 13, the author is kind of changing focus a little bit. And it's like he's kind of going, great, now that we've established how awesome Jesus is, what do we do with that? And how do we respond to that in the way that we live our lives? A key part of the answer to that question is this thing called faith. We're called to be a people of faith in the way that we live our lives. But what does it mean, again, to be a people of faith? And so you're in for a real treat this morning. You can endure me, but you can enjoy my wonderful wife who's going to come a little bit later and share some great stuff with you as well. Hallelujah. So that's something to look forward to. She's awesome. So again, when we get into Hebrews chapter 11, when you read that chapter, what you're reading, what we read together is a retelling of large parts of the Old Testament. And we have a big list given for us of a whole lot of people who lived by faith. And so we're not going to read the whole chapter, but to give you a bit of an idea of the repetition that we see in chapter 11, let's have a look at the first few verses. It says, now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients, the people of the Old Testament, were commended for. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command. By faith, Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did. By faith, Enoch was taken from this life. By faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear built an ark. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. That's just a very small sample of the rest of the chapter that goes on. By faith, so-and-so did this. By faith, this person did this. And so again, when we're asking the question, well, what is the intended message of this chapter? The repetition of that phrase, by faith, points us to something really powerful in the author's heart there. They're wanting us to consider what it means to live by faith. But you know, when we consider faith and talk about faith, we need to be careful that we don't impose upon the Bible what we think faith means, when it may be talking about something different. See, faith is a word that is used relatively frequently in our everyday lives and in the English language. But what is biblical faith? What are we talking about here? I don't know if we've got any rugby league fans here this morning. Anyone know anything about rugby league? It's a sport. Yeah, Loretta's up the waz. Come on. The New Zealand Warriors rugby league team, they play in the Australian NRL competition. And keep the faith has been a phrase that the supporters of the New Zealand Warriors have adopted. They write it on banners. There was even a documentary about celebrating the 25th year of the Warriors, and it was called Keeping the Faith. It's become this kind of tagline for the Warriors, right? So, keep the faith has become this phrase to capture something of the fervent support of the fan base of the Warriors, who continue to believe, Loretta, that this is our year. That's what Warriors fans say. The problem with that is that there hasn't been a year yet. But we keep the faith. 2026, maybe this is our year. See, keeping the faith within the context of the Warriors is an optimism, yes, but it's not actually based upon anything factual. historically speaking. Let me just give you some history. To date, the New Zealand Warriors rugby league team have played 632 matches. They've won 288 of them.
That's not bad.
It's not even half. It's 46%, which it could be worse. The Warriors have made the playoffs at the end of the season 10 times in the 31 years that they've been playing. Like, that's actually not great. Sorry, Warriors. I mean, I'd love the Warriors to do well. They managed to get to the grand final twice, and I remember both of these. 2002, that was going to be the year, until it wasn't. And 2011 was also going to be the year, and it was so close, but it wasn't. They've never won the competition. Never. There's teams that have joined the competition since the Warriors who have won the competition, but the Warriors still haven't. And yet we keep the faith. It's a worry. Those Warriors are a worry. And so it's interesting. That is, in our culture, something of a depiction of supposedly what faith is. But is that what the Bible's talking about when it talks about faith? Is faith just having to grit our teeth and keep believing for something better than what's been in the past when we really don't have anything much to base that on? Like, is that what faith is, or is it something different? Some quick points as we this morning are just seeking to build up an understanding of what faith is from the Hebrews 11 perspective. See, faith is not the rejection of thinking or of reason. This is interesting. Like, one of the things that annoys me in church life from time to time, that is well-intentioned, but I think a little bit misguided, is that in response to difficult situations, sometimes we can say to one another, hey, just have faith. And that's good to a point, because faith is good and we're called to be a people of faith. But when that message of just have faith comes across as, stop thinking about stuff so much and just have faith, it can inadvertently kind of say that your brain and your intellect is somehow the enemy here. And again, our brains, we can talk ourselves out of having faith if we're not careful, but our human ability to think and reason things through is not the enemy of faith per se. Faith in Jesus has a real rational component to it. It's based on historical facts. Jesus Christ was a real person who lived a real life, and he died upon a Roman cross. His body was placed in a tomb, and 3 days later, the tomb was empty. Those are the facts of the Christian message. Now, our belief, based on those facts, is that Jesus' body was not stolen. His disciples did not fabricate this belief that Jesus rose from the dead. We actually believe that Jesus rose from the dead as he said he would before he went to the cross. But we can look back at the death and the resurrection of Jesus as historical events, and our brains can consider them to feed our faith. So our brains are somehow connected with this idea of having faith. How we think matters. Faith involves thinking and reason, but it is more than just an exercise of the mind alone. Faith involves actions that are based on a certain way of thinking. Faith involves action. It's more than just concepts that we hold to. See, this is fascinating. In Hebrews 11, we have Sarah from the Old Testament. It says, Sarah considered God faithful. When you consider God faithful, like, that's kind of something that you do that involves your mind. Abraham reasoned that God could even raise the dead. Moses regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasures of Egypt. They're just a few examples within this catalogue in Hebrews 11 that show us that thinking matters. And what we think about, what we focus on, can either feed or work against our ability to trust God. But it's more than just thinking. We have in Hebrews 11 verse 4, by faith Abel brought God a better offering. He actually did something because of his faith. He brought an actual thing. By faith, Noah got some wood and built an ark. He did something. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to this place, he obeyed and went. By faith, Moses' parents hid him for 3 months. They actually did something. There's an action which is based upon seeing things a certain way and thinking and reasoning and considering in a certain way. So when we have faith, it's something that can actually be seen in the way that we live our lives. It's not just about certain ideas that we hold to and keep within ourselves that no one would ever know about unless we told them. What we believe becomes evident in how we live our lives. That's faith. So again, we're continuing to build up an idea of what faith is about as we see here in Hebrews. Now, I'm going to take a drinks break, and Bron is going to come and just continue building up this idea of what we see here in Hebrews 11, 12, and 13 about faith and what it looks like, what it means for our lives. Bronwyn, Godsiff, ladies and gentlemen. Woo!
Thank you. My watch is just telling me that I'm doing a workout because my heart rate's gone up spiking suddenly. Anyway, so that was chapter 11 that Phil has just read. I'm going to start by reading the first 3 verses of chapter 12. So Hebrews 12, verses 1 to 3. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. All right, so I'm going to have, there's so much that I could pull out of this, but I've only got a few minutes, so 2 points quickly. Verse 12, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. So who are these witnesses? Well, back in the day, the Bible didn't have chapters and verses, so it was just one kind of flowing thing. So the witnesses are these men and women of faith that were listed in chapter 11. These people who have gone before us. Now, a witness is, according to a dictionary, a noun, a person who has seen or can give first-hand evidence of some event, or a person or thing giving or serving as evidence, or a person who testifies, especially in the court of law, to events or facts, Paul, within his own knowledge. Paul's a lawyer. He's not been convicted in court. Don't worry. He's on the proper side. Yeah. These people, these men and women in chapter 11, their lives testify to us of the trustworthiness of the same God that we worship and put our faith in. The same God that they were putting their faith in is the same God we are putting our faith in. So their lives testify of that trustworthiness, of that faithfulness. Now we can listen to this list and think, these men and women, wow, they must have been amazing. This chapter 11, is known as the chapter, the heroes of faith. So if you got your name in the list of the heroes of faith, man, you must have had it all right, 100% of the time. But if you've been following along with the reading plan that Phil started a couple of weeks ago, I have, because I married him and he kind of checks up on me. No, I'm doing it because I want to grow in my Bible reading. Sorry, Phil. Anyway, if you also are following along with Phil and I, willingly, I am willingly this far. We'll give it a few more months. You would have already encountered the first 8 people on this list of people. And you might be thinking, these people didn't have it all together. Their lives were not perfect 100% of the time. So, what I have noticed, my first point, is that faith is messy and imperfect, and there's a process. Take Abraham, for example, the father of faith. In Genesis 18, we have him receiving the promise that by next year, Sarah, his wife, who is 100 at that time, is going to conceive, and that his offspring will come through Sarah, through the son that is Sarah is going to bear him. It's going to come out of her, one way or another. And then in chapter 20, and chapter 19, not a lot happens involving them. So the next pretty much thing about them is that they are traveling because they lived a nomadic life. They didn't just sit in one place the whole time. So they're traveling along and they get to this new territory. And Abraham says to Sarah, hey, can you do something for me? If anybody asks, tell them you're my sister. Because they might take one look at you. She's 100, remember? She must have had something going on. And look at you and think, oh, I want her. I'm going to kill Abraham to get you. And so Sarah goes, yeah, okay, I can tell people that you're my brother. And so that happens. And the king, Abimelech, the king, he takes one look at Sarah and does go, whoa, look at her. She might be 100, but something's going on. So what well is she drinking out of? And he takes her to be a part of her harem. Now remember, God's just said it's through Sarah that you're going to conceive and have a baby. How's that supposed to happen if she's off with somebody else? But don't worry. They may have messed up a little bit, but God stepped in. Before anything untoward could happen, God talked to the king Abimelech and said, it's not actually his sister, it's his wife, and you can't take her, you got to give her back. So he did, and he was like, Abraham, why did you say that? Why did you say that she was your sister so I could take her? I nearly did something really bad here. So Abraham obviously wasn't perfect 100% of the time. And then in Hebrews 11:11, talking about Sarah, it says, and by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. This makes it sound like Sarah straight away went, yes, I received that promise 100%. I'm sure this is going to happen. But when you read Genesis 18:10 to 15, it says, then one of them said, I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son. These are people of God talking. Now, Sarah was listening at the entrance to the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, after I'm worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure? Then the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, will I really have a child now that I am old? Is anything too hard for the Lord? No. I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son. Yeah. Sarah was afraid, so she lied and said, I did not laugh. But he said, yes, you did laugh. So, reading this, Sarah obviously started out a bit skeptical, but she got there. As Phil said, she considered, she thought about it, she looked back at the things that God had already done in their lives and thought, actually, God is faithful. Yeah. Who has made the promise? He can do it. So, they must have had action that went along with that, and it happened. Yeah. Faith is messy. none of the people in this list were perfect. Jacob, he's on the list too. He tricked his brother into giving him his birthright for some lentil stew. If I was being tricked, there would have to be something more meaty, I think. And then he tricked his father into giving him the father's blessing that is supposed to go to the firstborn, which he was not. So I wouldn't say that's 100% perfect. Moses, he killed a guard and then ran away to live in the desert. But in verse 30 it says, by faith the walls of Jericho fell after the army had marched around them for 7 days. But this leaves out the part of them having to live in the wilderness for 40 years because of their lack of faith. And then we have Rahab, who was a prostitute. So I don't think I need to get into what she had going on. All these people were messy, imperfect lives. But they are still heroes of faith because they continued to move forward into the plans God had for their lives as their faith continued to grow and develop. And we can look to their lives as encouragement of God's faithfulness as we also continue to grow and develop in our faith. We don't need to have it all together. Growing in faith is messy and imperfect because we are messy and imperfect people. Just got to see my bedroom and you'll see how messy. No, it's getting better. I'm growing. The second half of Hebrews 12:1 says, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. The picture in Hebrews 12 is not of a finely tuned athlete with rippling biceps and their chiseled six-pack, as you can tell I have. I won't comment. We are pictured as runners who are carrying a bunch of stuff that's slowing us down. We're carrying stuff that hinders our ability to move forward and run the race marked out for us. We're tangled up in sinful habits and mindsets that are entangling us. We're not perfect, and so the journey or race of faith is an imperfect and messy one where God is helping us slowly learn how to get rid of all the stuff that we're carrying that's not from him. And sometimes you put things down only to pick it up at the next 100-meter mark and put it down again and pick it up again, but it's a process. We're not perfect. And as messy, imperfect athletes, we're to run the race set out for us. Each of us has a unique and special each of us are unique and special, and God created each of us that way with a unique and special plan for our lives. Jeremiah 29:11 says, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. We need to run our race, to stay in our lanes. You know, last Sunday afternoon, a great sporting event took place. It was the family relay at the Christchurch Avon Athletics Club Day. Club Day. Conway, our lovely son, was super keen to take part in this, and he'd been talking about it for quite a while. Me, not so much. You may take one look at me and go, you look like a finely tuned athlete who runs quite often. You would be mistaken. I can't remember the last time I sprinted 100 metres. It may have been chasing Conway when he was a toddler. I'm not sure. But we're sitting here and Conway is getting so amped up for this family race. So I did what everybody else would do, and I looked at my friend Claire, and I said, Claire, do you want to swap places? Because she only had 2 members of her family there and couldn't do it. And she said, oh, I'd love to. But, actually she didn't, she laughed at me. But the rules were very, very strict. No ring-ins. So I was the only person who could fill this spot in our family relay team. Well, he was in it too. You had to have 4 people. It was a 4 by 100 metres. So there was Conway, me, Phil and Niall. We were all there. I was the only one that could run my leg. If I didn't do it, they weren't allowed to do it. I was going to disqualify them all. So did what every mum would do. And I went, okay. And so I lined up in my lane, stood in my lane. I was in the second lane. I had to stay in that lane. If you cross the lane, you're disqualified. Can't go in somebody else's lane. Looked to my left, and there's a mum wearing her athletics gear who looks like she runs quite often. Then there was me, who was in my just come from church gear. And then there was an 8-year-old girl in the lane next to me. And I didn't like my chances beating either one of them. But I did it. I did some stretches, so I didn't pull a hamstring. And I did it. I ran in the race. I did say to Claire, you better not film this. There better not be any evidence that I did this. But I ran my race that only I could do. But even though you cannot run my race and I cannot run your race, we can support one another in our races. My second point is faith is lived out together in community. It's not a solo sport. We all need people to encourage, support, and to teach us. This is God's plan for our spiritual growth. Not just us and Him, but us, Him, and people. And you know what? Our family relay was not the only grueling race that took place last weekend. It may have been the major one, but there was another slightly less famous one, the Coast to Coast. A race where people run, cycle and kayak their way from the west coast of the South Island to the east coast of the South Island. This seems like something Nina might do. But these competitors, these highly tuned athletes, they require a support crew. They cannot do this on their own. And the support crew cannot run or cycle or kayak in their place, but they are crucial in ensuring the competitor is able to make it across the finish line. They provide support, nutrition and hydration, encouragement and communication, and safety monitoring, plus much, much more. Just like these athletes, we need a support crew to help us in our faith journey. People to encourage and support us. When I was running my leg of the relay, I could hear Conway cheering me on. Go, Mum, don't stop. Don't fall over. Yeah. And I could see Phil was in front of me, and I could hear him encouraging me, saying, come on, don't stop. And in my mind, I was just thinking, Phil, don't move, because you know how the relay person's supposed to start running? It's like, I can't go any further, just stay there. But we didn't come last. That is a win for us. Phil overtook some people. So, encouragement and support is crucial. Now, sports psychologists believe that sideline support makes an impact on athletes' performances. One study found that when athletes receive frequent encouragement, effort level increases by 7%, which might not sound like a lot, but it's a lot when you're already giving 100%, you know? Now, I believe encouragement and support from people around us doesn't just make a difference, but is crucial. In Hebrews 10:19-25, it says, therefore, brothers and sisters, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way opened for us through the curtain, that is his body, and since we have a great priest over the house of God, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and with the full assurance that faith brings, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience, and having our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold unswervingly to the hope we profess. For he who promised is faithful, and let us consider how we may spur one another on towards love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another. Oh, Phil's highlighted the points that I wanted highlighted. You missed one. But do you see the repetition of the plural forms? Us, we, are. We are called to do life together.
That's right.
And yes, I have a wonderful husband and a family that I do life with. But I also have an amazing small group of women. And I love my small group because Phil doesn't go to Kmart with me nearly enough. At all. I think for the count on my hand. But I know if I need prayer, I'm only a message away from having, I don't know how many of us there are, 10, 11. We need extra chairs at a table in the cafe now. Having all these women praying for me, standing with me and encouraging me. We check in on each other. We encourage each other and we feed each other, both spiritually and physically. Times in my life that have been hard, I can always look back and see that these people were there for me, bringing food usually, and prayer. And I couldn't do life without that. And Phil and I, we don't want anyone to have to do life without people around them. We want everyone to have people to do life with in a small group. And if you don't have a small group, we'd love to help you find one. Ross Anderson is now leading our small group ministry here at Burnside, and he is passionate about seeing healthy small groups where people are growing spiritually through community. And if you'd like us to help you find a small group, please fill out a contact card that Phil talked about or scan the back one, and we would love to help get you in one. And then you can have your own group of Kmart shoppers. Well, maybe that might not be everybody's cup of tea, but we'll find people who can be your people. Yeah.
I'm going to sit down very, very soon. But this is wrapping up this series. And faith is how we're called to live. Faith is not the rejection of thinking or reason. Faith involves actions. It's how we live our lives. Yes, faith is messy and imperfect because we're all growing in our faith. Faith is something that we can only live out in community with one another. And faith is the key characteristic of the lives we live here and now, looking back at the death and resurrection of Jesus and looking forward to the fulfillment of this kingdom that we are already a part of. Come and stand with me. We're going to pray, team.